All right, welcome to Manhattan, Kansas. We are live, KCSN live in Manhattan. This is a live edition of the Lock It Up with Kurtz podcast. I'm sure we look a little better, a little cooler sitting out here than we do sitting in our living rooms. I am John Kurtz, joined by Aaron Lockett. As always, we're starting off with a bang here with a special guest, Travis Tannehill, former Big 12 champion, first team All Big 12 selection at tight end as well for your Wildcats back in the golden age of Snyder 2.0. We're going to talk plenty of K-State football. Between the three of us, we've got James Dunnigan lined up, another former Wildcat and Big 12 champion later on. Gene Taylor, K-State athletic director, going to stop by here at some point as well before 2 o'clock as we get you ready for K-State and TCU. So, first things first, Aaron, good to see you here. My friend, it's a big day for you.
It is.
The fans are going to be seeing a little bit more of you later on, but excited to have you along for the ride live and in color here.
Yeah,
man.
no, excited to always be part of Kansas State football. Like I said, I got a chance to get access to the field. It's been a while. But brought those glory days back and a little bit of an itch. And so I'm excited to see us play today and make sure that we can do what we need to do.
Yes, sir. Stage set for K-State to get rolling here after an 0-3 start to Big 12 play. They pulled out a 25-24 win last week over Texas Tech. And kind of a reeling TCU squad in the house today that's lost 4 of 5. And you're going to hear more from Travis Tannehill on that because he is on the K-State HD TV pregame show today with Brian Smoller. You can catch him on there throughout the season. But, Travis, appreciate you coming by, my friend.
Thanks. Good to have you, or good to see you again. And nothing so far this year, so we always catch up at least once or twice a season.
I was going to say.
For some work. So,
well, for those that don't know, Travis Tannehill and I had a run as roommates once upon a time.
We did. Yes, we did.
For maybe 6 months, something like that?
Half year or so.
Yeah.
I think I got married and you moved on. So.
Yeah, that was how that went. But so I can never be. I've got to be pretty chummy with Travis because he knows too much about me, like some side knowledge from 25-year-old John Kurtz. So I got to be a little careful. Man, it felt to me. I'll start, Travis, with you on this. It felt to me like last week. I mean, look, I know it was a 1-point win. It was relatively ugly. I saw a stat today that K-State was like the third team in college football this year to win a game where they fell behind, trailed at halftime, rushed for less yards than their opponent, and there was like one more qualifier there. The point being, there were a lot of things that were working against K-State to win that game, but it just felt like that team desperately needed it very, very badly. You've been in locker rooms before, when loose to pile up, everybody just needs one of those games to like let loose a little bit, and that seemed like what happened.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, they found a way to win that ball game, which was huge. And if they would have lost that in the fashion that they did, I think that we might have seen some guys throw the towel and kind of throw the towel on the season. The guys who got a shot at the NFL, sometimes when the season's, there's nothing really to play for, they start thinking about their health more than the team.
Yeah.
And so I think it was really good to just get that win and keep that positivity in that locker room. Because they lost some early games, but to some amazing teams. So it's like they got a chance to really run the table towards the end of the season here and have, a relatively successful year.
It's just it. I mean, if you roll through this game against TCU, sub-500 team, Kansas next week, we know you're going to be the heavy favorite there. Then West Virginia, I know it's been a bugaboo for Chris Kleiman, but that's probably going to be a sub-500 team. You'll likely be favored there, assuming that you do win the next 2 games. We're talking about 7-3. Who would have complained about 7-3, going into Texas and Baylor at the end of the year? Yep. Nobody.
Not me at all, no. And that's when you break it down like that, there's a chance to have a really special team. And I think anytime you got a veteran quarterback like Skyler, he can really pull this team together. And that's what's been, from a fan and an analyst standpoint, it's been such a frustrating year because I think they have the pieces. They just haven't put it all together. And we saw it happen a little bit in that second half. And if they can just do that for 4 quarters, we heard Coach Kleiman mention that this year. He's like, we got to play 4 quarters, which is totally true. And the things that are killing them are the things that are usually pretty easy to fix. Turnovers, penalties, things like that. It's not like, hey, we got guys lined up over. It's like, no, it's stupid mental stuff that if they get that cleaned up, they will elevate their play so much just so easily.
Yeah, that's kind of to me where this K-State team sits, as opposed to like Aaron, some of the teams you played on. You guys were so talented, there was more margin for error, right, for those kind of things. And this team, not to say that they're not talented, but they don't have the kind of talent advantage you guys typically did on a week-in, week-out basis to afford them the ability to make 12 penalties for 93 yards, for example.
Right. Yeah, I think when you bring a new coach in, like I said, Kleiman over the last 3 years, you have to bring depth. Right. And so it's going to take people a little while to get on board, to get the recruits in that you need to get his team here. And so because of that, you've got the guys that are on the field, but they've got to play. Right. And so we talk about that rotation that they do that I'm not a super fan of, but it seems to work in some capacity. But if a guy's playing well, leave him out there. Let's ride the wave, see what he can do. But for the most part, I think they're doing a better job of getting off the field here late on third downs. We've got to start faster, though, right? The last 2 games is just not going to work. Not in the Big 12. It's too much talent, too much going on. And so if you find yourself getting behind, we've had a chance last week to come around, but I don't think you can do that against the Texas and the Baylors of the world. And so we've got to correct that before that time comes.
I'm interested for your take on this, Travis, because Aaron has talked about this a lot as a former player, and I totally understand your attitude. Like, I want to be the guy. I want to be out there all the time. I don't want to be subbed in and out. But this coaching staff firmly believes in, obviously one of their philosophies is we're going to sub a lot of guys. It's going to look like hockey line changes, and then at the end of the game, we'll be fresh. I mean, I think that's really the ultimate idea there, and just getting guys some reps and kind of bringing them along. But where do you sit as far as that's concerned? I'm trying to think of career, how much plucking it out of a game when you were playing?
Not too much. I mean, obviously the tight end would come off the field. We'd be in 10 personnel or whatever. I'd come off and get a little bit of a breather. But no, most of the time, at least at the tight end position, it was, we got your ones and we got your twos. And if there's a 2 tight end package, there'll be, Andre would be in there and Trujillo would be in there, some of those guys. But, I mean, I think you really just got to look at it position from position basis. I mean, there's some guys, I mean, when I played with Tyler, I mean, he never got tired. Me, I got tired. I could have used 3 or 4 plays off, and I would have come back a lot of pressure. So I think you just got to look at it from a play-by-play. We talk about that motor all the time. Ryan Mueller needs no plays off. He can go 100% every single snap. And, Coach Snyder would tell you that that's a mental thing, and you all can go 100% every single snap. But I don't care. Fourth quarter, I'm tired. If you would have given me, 2 or 3 plays off, and then the first half, I might have been a little fresher that fourth quarter. So, but I see both sides of it. I mean, obviously, you want to get guys in a rhythm. Obviously, I hate the 2 quarterbacks, which we haven't. Kansas State hasn't done this year. Some teams try to do. Wide receivers. We got 10, 11 guys caught passes last week, something like that. So obviously, we're rotating them in. And I think though, from offense, I can see it either way, but I really like it on the defensive side just because you have to be fresh on defense, and you want those guys in a groove. But you got tired defensive line. They're going to run up and down the field on you, and you need those guys up front and those linebackers fresh.
That definitely makes some sense, I think, right? Like on the defensive line.
I do agree there. Your front 7 needs to be rotated, but that back 4, they've got to get comfortable. They've got to understand what type of receiver they're dealing with, and they've got to see some of the backside plays and see how the receiver's playing so they can understand when it happens what's going on. If you rotate the corner in and out, the corner comes in fresh and doesn't realize what receiver he's getting. He's not matching up personnel. He's just matching up schemes then. And that's the problem where you may get matched up against a guy that you didn't expect to get matched up with, and then you have to figure out, is he a tall guy, possession receiver? Is he a deep threat guy? Can he take the top off? Like, those are the things that if you're consistently out there and you've done your personnel, you know what's going on. And so from a receiver standpoint as well, the reason you want to get out there is because you want to look at the defense, because when you come off the field, they say, hey, what do you see? Well, I've got to be out there, right? Cover for 3. Is it black? What's going on? And so those are the reasons I wanted to always be out there, just so you can get the game. And then honestly, you got to get hit early, right? Don't throw me the ball in the second quarter. Like in the first quarter, give me a ball or something. Let me get a stop block. Let me get a backside block, something to get me into the game to let me know, okay, what kind of game is going to be? Am I have a good game? Am I ready to go? Or do I need to get my juices flowing a little bit? And so that's the purpose of just being out there, just making sure that you can get all of those things worked out. Because when they call your number, you've got to deliver.
What's interesting, you bring that up too, coming off the field and being like, hey, what do you see? What do you see? Because one of my favorite anecdotes in the game against Texas Tech was the fact that we found out after the game that the eventual game-winning touchdown pass to Deuce Vaughn was a play that although the players have been saying all game, like, this is open, they tried to get into it multiple times, but had to check out of it because they needed it to not be too much pressure coming to Skylar Thompson. I found that pretty fascinating. Like, you guys have the insight here. Like, how often does that happen where a play comes up because somebody out there is saying, like, hey, this is open, or the coaches are asking you about that?
I mean, every game stuff like that. Yeah, every game that thing kind of happens. And I mean, I know during Coach Snyder, especially after that first drive, because you can prep all week and that defense can come out and do something totally different. So you go out there on that first drive, hopefully you got a few first down, move the ball, got to see 7-8 plays, and Coach Snyder brings quarterback, top receivers, tight ends. All right, what do we see? Can we run option? What can we do against this team? Did they line up as we prepared? Because those coaches in the press box, they can see, but the angles aren't quite always there. And they're trying to call plays, and it's kind of controlled chaos, especially on that first drive. So it's that feedback, on the ground feedback, which really comes from a veteran crew. And if you got a bunch of freshmen and sophomores out there, we're just trying to get them up in the right spot, block the right guy, go on the right snap count. But when you got a veteran quarterback, he's going to be able to slow that game down and process that game quickly enough, that data to the coaches on the sideline, and make adjustments in game.
Yeah. And what you'll see is they always have the first 15, right? The first 15 plays script. Whether they work or not, it's really just to see if the defense is going to adjust. And so after that, then you get into the real game plan, the chess match from there. And so for the most part, those first 15 normally is mostly run heavy. They won't come out. That's the reason you see them never come out and throw a post on the first play of the game, right? They want to understand what the defense is looking like. Although as a receiver, throw the post on the first play of the game.
That's what I was going to say. I mean, hit them when they're not expecting it,
That's what I want.
Get you that catch in the first quarter.
Yeah, so they don't understand like what type of speed they're playing with, because it takes a little while to get acclimated to your defense, right? The biggest thing I noticed when I was playing is you never know how physical a guy is until you actually get on the field, right? And so whether you're blocking him or whether he makes a tackle, then it kind of lets you know that, oh man, he's a little bit more physical than I thought, right? You change your game plan from that. And so I always think that keeping guys out there initially to do a thought process of what's happening needs to take place early in the first quarter.
Yeah. What about the tight ends that K-State's playing right now, Travis? I mean, Daniel Amaterbebe clearly has a lot of talent. Obviously, I think the injuries have held him back some, but it's Sammy Wheeler, kind of the same deal. I think he's a really talented pass catcher. Injuries have held him back some. They like Ben Sinnott. It's kind of like an H-back in between. I mean, there are a lot of options and guys that have gotten involved. It just seems to me to all be a matter of health right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think if any of those guys were 100% healthy, they would step up and probably be that number one. But it's kind of how everything else has been, especially even at the wide receiver position. Mm-hmm. It's kind of been a wide receiver, tight end by committee. We saw Nick Leonard last week have a catch and a fumble, and so and that, going back to what Aaron said, getting the ball early. I mean, I always thought I hated catching the ball. First catch in the third quarter, taking a big hit. I'm like, I haven't touched this ball in like forever, and so it's like, of course you're going to fumble it. Yeah, how many catches has Nick Leonard had this year?
Right.
It's like 2. Yeah. And so it's like I don't know exactly, but it's like, well, he's not used to carrying the ball and taking hits, and so that is so hard to go from that mentality. I'm block, and then I got the ball in the open field and I got to make a guy miss, and that's why I just tucked my head and held on to the ball. I'd never tried to make anyone miss.
Except for that one time at Oklahoma.
That one time in Oklahoma, we tried to hurdle a guy, and I'm lucky I didn't break my neck. So, but no, I mean, overall, I've been relatively happy with the tight end position. I think they've done a really nice job. I don't think we have anyone on this team that's going to be kind of your go-to guy at the tight end position. I think they're all kind of your role players, which is fine, and that works in this offense. So when they've all had to step up, they have. And Daniel's had a nice career. I think if he was healthy, it would be, he would be the go-to guy, but he's been battling injury.
Just overall, big picture on the offense with Skylar Thompson being forced to kind of sit back in the pocket more now and abandon the running game. I don't want to say the injury was like a good thing because they did have to go play at Stillwater without him, but in some ways, maybe a blessing in disguise, for the offense long term here. I
mean, you look at how Skylar's played. I mean, he's having an unbelievable season. I mean, statistically, I know maybe the point production hasn't quite been there, but I think that's because of the the committees around him, and they've had some untimely turnovers and untimely penalties. They haven't been able to move the ball quite as well as he or anyone else wants to. But I mean, he's playing exceptional football. He's making good throws, making great decisions, and he, like you said, he gets a little feet happy in the pocket sometimes, which this has forced him to stay in there just because he doesn't want to. He's passing first and second. So, no, I mean, I'm thrilled with how Skylar's playing, and I think he's only going to progress throughout the season as these guys get more and more comfortable around him.
All right, well, I know you've got to hop off here pretty soon, but I'll ask you this about TCU before we go. I had Curry Sexton on my radio show regularly. I always would ask him when the opponent's coming up, like, what were these guys like to play against? Like, what was that program like? So TCU, you got to experience playing TCU. Those were pretty good TCU teams back then. What is playing a Gary Patterson TCU team typically like?
I mean, when I went through, their defense was always fundamentally sound. They were always physical. They were always pretty solid on defense. I knew we always had to, some teams, you're going to get quite a bit of running yards, where TCU was like, all right, we got to get it on a hat. We're going to have to move guys off the ball. We're going to have to play physical. I'm going to be really sore after the game. Yeah. TCU this year, their defense hasn't done very well. So I don't know I don't know their defensive coordinator situation, or if that's changed, or what's changed on that defensive side of the ball, or if they're just missing guys, because Gary Patterson's a great coach. He's a defensive mind. But a lot of times, those teams can flip on a dime. So you just never know, if the coaching is there, these players just pick it up, and sometimes it takes half the season. So that, Kansas State better bring it. And this TCU team's going to be, they're going to be physical. They always are.
Travis, much appreciate the time. Thanks for hanging out with us here, man. Best of luck on the HDTV broadcast. We'll see you soon.
Perfect. Thanks, John. Thanks, Aaron.
Take care.
Appreciate it, guys.
All right. Travis Tannehill with us here, former K-State tight end, Big 12 champion, guest number 1 here on the live version of Lock It Up with Kurtz. Tucker, do we want to take a short little break here? All right, we'll take a short little break, come back, and keep it rolling. We're with you until 2 o'clock on the live version of the Lock It Up with Kurtz podcast here in Manhattan. All right, we are live back here from Manhattan. We are, of course, right in front of Snyder Family Stadium. John Kurtz, Aaron Lockett, Tucker Franklin behind the scenes doing a great job for us here on KCSN, and appreciate everybody that hung out with us last night at the live show with Bethany Bowman over at Rockin' K's as well. It's been a really fun weekend, and, of course, we are getting ready for K-State and TCU, which is coming up at 2:30 at Bill Snyder Family Stadium. We go from one Big 12 champion, Travis Tannehill, to another here. James Dunnigan played defensive back for the Wildcats, so part of that 2003 Big 12 championship team. James, appreciate the time and coming on with us here. I was trying to remember. So were you there 02, 03? What was your career at K-State?
2002.
Oh, 2002. My bad. Okay.
Hey, no worries.
Well, first of all, do you get back very often? Are you around Manhattan?
I'm actually in Manhattan. I work for the Boys and Girls Club. I love the atmosphere in Manhattan. It's a great town for raising kids. Couldn't be a better place.
Awesome. Well, I know that it's got to be exciting to be back here around the old stadium. Like Aaron mentioned, he got here, the juices started flowing. When you get around the stadium, man, what starts coming through your brain, coming through your mind?
3 days.
That is a great answer.
Oh, no, really. So the thing that comes back to me the most is when we played USC, the night game, and when you see all the lights flickering and you get your juices flowing and the big game atmosphere. I miss those days most importantly. So, yeah, it's great to always be back and be around all this purple.
Man, take me through that. What was that 02 USC game like? What do you remember about that one?
So, first and foremost, I'm so sorry to my brother.
At the 0-1 game is what he was.
Oh,
and then from there, I let my teammates take it on the next year.
We took care of the business the next year. So a kid named James Terry, I think you know who he is.
Yeah.
So we had should we even say that we have a hit out on Troy, and we were successful the second time around because we can't let our brother go out like that.
Yeah.
So that game was huge. I think that team went on. Did they win the national championship?
I think they won the Orange Bowl.
Yeah, they were in the conversation.
Yeah.
They were pretty good.
Carson Palmer won the Heisman.
Yeah, that was their only loss of the season. I want to say after they lost to us, then that was it. They just kept rolling from there. They had Mike Williams at receiver, and Troy, of course, who's a Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
It was exciting. I remember coming in on the back end of that game, and there was an article up and saying Bill gave me some kudos to say, we came in and we kind of sealed the deal for him at the end. So it was a great opportunity for me, and I was very appreciative of that moment.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. One thing about, I'm going to call him JD. I can't call him James, right? We're teammates. And so one thing about JD, though, is JD and I always stayed in contact, right? And so when I come back into Manhattan, we always connect and get a chance to reminisce and talk about old times and talk about family. The biggest thing, though, is, the transfer portal is going on now. And so you see all these kids jump into the transfer portal trying to go to these new schools, and they really don't understand what the atmosphere is. And so James is one of the few that I remember, not coming from JC, a junior college, but he was coming from Purdue. Mm-hmm. And so I always wanted to ask JD, what brought you to Manhattan? What was it about the atmosphere that you felt that this is the place for you?
Okay, so if you really want me to be blatantly honest, it was between Nebraska and K-State.
Ooh, okay.
So at the time, Michael Bishop was making his run. I had actually played against K-State, or I was actually on a team that played against K-State
not that
in
year.
the Alamo Bowl.
Not that year.
So, and the quarterback at Purdue was Drew Brees at the time. We had a DN named Roosevelt Colvin. We were pretty solid ourselves, but K-State was on the roll. They had just came off Big 12 championship appearance, and then the game they were in was a tough loss for them. So then they faced us in the Alamo Bowl. So I got to see the program up and close, in that atmosphere. And then David Allen was a close friend to a guy named Deshaun Austin that played at Purdue, and he was my best friend on the team. So I got to meet a lot of K-State players, not knowing that 2 years I would be coming to K-State.
Right.
Yeah. So I went to Garden City. When I got there, a gentleman named Jim Gush really came and spoke to me and, gave me the rundown about K-State, and I started focusing and seeing what it was about. So we played cover 2 at Purdue. And I thought for my professional career at the time, I needed to be playing man. And so I watched Demetrius Butler, Daishad Carter. These guys lock up week in and week out. And I said, I need that in my life. I need that as, to add to my skill set. And I decided to come to K-State. and it was a great experience. We beat Nebraska.
Yeah.
I think it was 62-0. Jamal Lord was the quarterback. He had a rough day, but hey, it is. That's just
Yeah.
You know what's interesting about the football world? It's very small. So Deshaun Austin that he mentioned, Deshaun and I got a chance to play together professionally. Chike O'Keefe and I was in San Francisco 49ers together. And so when you start talking about the football community, it gets very small, right? And so it's interesting now as we talk about all these guys transfer, they have so much access to all these other universities that they really do have something inside scoop on what makes sense. And so it's just interesting that the portal is now a conversation now. It used to just be about recruiting. If you didn't play early, you just had to wait your turn, right? Now there's options for players to move around, and I understand it, but it'll be interesting to see how it shakes out, but that's just one of the intricacies you see now about college football.
For sure.
Yeah, well, and for you going through it at that time, like how much different did it feel at that time? It was like a way bigger deal to transfer, right? At that point in time than it really is now.
Man, for me, it was staying focused. Because you got to think it's a very risky situation. I'm starting as a redshirt freshman at Purdue University. Why would I screw that up? So you can go to Kansas State and possibly not even get on the field. You got Terrence Newman, who's the Thorpe Award winner.
Yeah.
You're not sure if you're going to have to beat him out, for one. So you have to have confidence in yourself as a person. You know what I mean? And a lot of kids these days do have confidence or don't. But I know for me, it was about the confidence I had. Me and Lockett are not very big guys. And I was just telling the young lady over there, if you're going to play a sport, you have to exude some type of confidence to make it. And so when I made that transition, I came into K-State. And the guys here they seem more athletic and they seem more violent.
Yeah.
So
the lynch mob.
Yeah,
right?
the mentality was just way more. Let's do this, you know what I mean? And so it also really fit my personality. So it was like a perfect fit. It was like a glove put onto my hand, and we just rode with it. We were the number 1 defense in the nation in 2002, all categories. And those guys are like brothers now.
Yeah, well, I mean, you got, man.
Yeah.
We mentioned
They're
Terrence
loaded.
Newman,
They're
but
loaded.
the linebackers on that team, like Buell,
Terry
Pierce, Hickman,
Hickman.
like
Hey, rest in peace, Dick. I love you, bro.
Yeah. Stoll was there.
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
they were
man,
loaded.
you had some dudes. What was it like working in and around Terrence Newman every single day?
Man. So Terrence is a guy that I have to respect at all times because he was a student of the game. All right. So he's going to be in the meeting room. He's going to watch film, and he's going to make himself better. So I saw the transition from his junior year when we're down at OU and he dropped like 4 picks. And I'm like, bro, come on. You know what I'm saying? Then the next year, no picks drop. Nothing touches the ground, plays receiver, returns kicks. I mean, he exploded onto the college football field. You know what I mean? So he's exceptionally talented athlete. I mean, I would compare his talent to Deion Sanders.
Yeah.
His confidence might not be as exuberant as a prime time,
right?
But his talent level of being to be able to run, jump, those abilities were like Deion Sanders, and surprisingly, he ended up in Dallas.
Yeah.
You know what's interesting about Terrence? I was his host when he came in from Salina, and he had broke his arm coming out of high school, and so Terrence wasn't very big when he came in, right? Call it 165 pounds, right? 5'11", 6 foot, frail with his arm in a sling, and was just like, I can beat you running. And I was like, no, you can't. Then I turned around and saw him run a 4.2 when he got here. And I was like, oh, that boy can go, But just athletic wise, it was interesting because he didn't get on the field initially, right? Like you said, you had Lamar Chapman, you had Demetrius Butler, you had Deshaun Carter. He fought with Deron Tyler when he got here, and so he waited his turn. But I tell you what, when you talk about true athletic ability, 40-inch vertical, 4.2, 360 dunk, it's amazing all of that came out of Salina, But I tell you what, Terrence and I ran track together, indoor track, and so I got to see just his twitches and how he moves and so it didn't surprise me that he was that successful on the pro level. But it was powerful. Yeah, it was really good to see him. And once he put the size on as well, once he became, a student of the game as far as making his body his priority, he was an all-pro guy. And so I love watching him play in Dallas, love watching him play in Minnesota. Just one of those guys that's going to always represent K-State the right way.
Yeah,
for sure.
Out of all those guys that you played with, Tinu would, I assume, the best athlete that was on the team at that point. Who else is in that?
minute.
Who's in this conversation? Let me know who's in this conversation.
First and foremost, there's a guy right in the complex, probably right now, and his name is Joe Hall.
yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
I'm talking about a guy that will catch the ball out the backfield at 300 pounds.
Sweet feet.
Might shake you, might run you over,
Yeah, sweet feet.
might stiff arm you, might hurdle you.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, we have phenomenal athletes in general in that locker room. So it would be unfair to say Terrence Newman was the best athlete, Joe Hall was the best athlete. I mean, Warren Lott is a guy that no one
from Clemson. Yeah, I
would
remember
never
Warren.
ever talk about, but
Yeah.
exceptional athlete, you know. So that's what made us who we were, because the recruiting was very at a high level at that time. We're getting all types of great recruits in at that time from the junior colleges of Butler, Garden City, myself from Garden. Respect to GCC for everybody out here listening right now. You Garden City Bronx Busters, go do your thing. But yeah, we had a ton of talent. It would be unfair for me to just pick one guy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. You know, the question to have is the thing I love about college is you bring all of these players from different cities, right? Guys that would never meet each other. And me coming from Tulsa, Oklahoma, when I came to Manhattan, Kansas, got a chance to meet guys from Houston and Dallas and Kansas City. And so what's interesting about JD is JD's from DC.
Yeah.
I don't think we ever recruited anybody out of DC.
Yeah.
Wait, McDonald?
He's from Virginia.
That was like
DMV.
Darnell McDonald, that is, you know. But it was always interesting to be around JD just because his mentality was a true East Coast mentality, right? It was more of matter of fact, straight shooter, very direct, and so I can appreciate that. And so it's just interesting that, like I'm saying, being able to bring that type of talent to Manhattan, Kansas, I think was one of the things that allowed us to be successful at that level.
Yeah.
So
Melting pot.
oh yeah.
Definitely.
Yep, definitely. Middle of the map.
Yeah, middle of the map, man. Like, it's totally different from growing up in DC than coming to Manhattan, Kansas. And, you know, everybody talks about Manhattan, but being here for over 15 years, I'm not going to just talk about Manhattan. I'm going to talk about Junction City. I'm going to talk about Rock. I'm going to talk about Wauwego, because these are the surrounding areas, and all these people that you meet from these surrounding areas have a good quality that that kind of changed me as a person. Because in DC, when you're it's mind your own business. You don't speak to someone you don't know, and then you come to Manhattan, and then everybody's like, "Hey, how you doing?"
Yeah, right.
And you're like, "Hey, man, mind your business." So, but no, you learn how to be more social, and you learn how to pick up on social cues, and it's good people in these surrounding areas. I don't want to just talk about Manhattan, because it's good people in the surrounding areas of Manhattan as well. Like I said, Junction, Wauwego, Rock Creek, which is called the Flint Hills.
Yeah.
So let's be understood that all of them are K-State fans as well. So yes, for sure.
Absolutely. We're talking here with James Dunnigan, former Wildcat. We haven't talked much about this team this year. What are your observations on where this team is at?
Man,
at 4-3.
I could tell you last week I was on my remote, the TV, and then next thing I know, I'm like, hold up.
Yeah.
You know, so these guys are just, they're up and down. They got to learn how to have a baseline. They got to find their identity, and they got to put their hat on something to say, this is what we're going to be good at. And then we're going to take it to every team every week. We're going to be good at this one thing, and then we're going to build on it from there. And once they find their identity, I think they're going to be all right. You know what I mean? That's one thing we could, when I was playing, we knew who we were. We knew what we wanted to enforce on their team. And once we figured that out, then we won games. I don't think our guys have figured that out yet. So it's just going to take some time, and we have to be patient as fans. And I know everybody wants to win right away, but sometimes you got to let it develop. And so let's give these kids a chance to develop, and then maybe a year or two from now, if they're not doing it, then let's jump on their case then.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, that's the point. I think, you know, as former players and even as analysts, I think one of the things that former players, and we had this conversation earlier today, is the mentality.
It's a mentality.
Right? You've got to believe that you are the guy, right? Regardless of the circumstances, regardless if you get an opportunity, when that time comes, you have to deliver, right? And it's just having that mentality. And a lot of people would know it as Mamba mentality if it was to be categorized and branded a certain way, but it's just knowing that you've got to deliver as a champion over and over and over and over. And so I think that's just getting those mental reps. And just making sure that, you know what success looks like. And when you touch it, then you're eager to have it again. And then you want it. And that's the only thing you have. You won't settle for less. And so once you start putting that in the forefront of how you're thinking when you approach a game or any obstacle, you'll start to see the transition change. And that's what we had when I played. It was infectious across the team. I mean, whether it was me, Mike B, it was Darnell, it was Frank Murphy, it was Isaac Harvin, it was Chap, it was Coop, it was across the board. Everybody respectively own their positions, right? I haven't even mentioned John McCraw. I haven't Ben Lieber. Like if you start thinking about Monty Beisel, like it just keeps going and going.
So I remember my junior year going to my senior year, I thought my position was, you read the magazine, it's Dunnigan Newman. We're the top two secondaries in the 12. They ranked us preseason. I get in the locker room, I look at the board, and some kid named Jordan's name's next to mine, 1/1. And I'm like, he's not even here. But that's what Bill did. At the time, I didn't realize what Coach Snyder was doing. He was keeping me on point with an imaginary player. Think about that.
Yeah.
You're fighting at spring practice against a guy that ain't even here.
Right.
Yeah.
So I remember I went to hit Terry at practice. I flipped him, and Bill ran up on me and said, "If you hurt one of my," and I said, "Coach, get Jordan's name off the board." I'm playing hard because I'm trying to solidify myself, but that was the mentality back then. You're trying to prove yourself at all times. I don't know if these guys are trying to prove themselves every day. So I'm not in the locker room, so I'm not going to comment too further on that. But if you're listening, KSU players, prove yourself every day. Practice like it's a game, and everything else works itself out.
You know, I had this thought. The defensive coordinators you played for pretty high profile too, right?
Oh, yeah.
Would that have been Phil Bennett and Brett Bielema when you were there?
Yeah, for sure. Phil Bennett, man, I love that dude.
Oh, yeah.
He's the reason that he created a position for me, which is called nickel and dime. You know what I mean? That's why I came to K-State, to play the nickel dime position. And Deron Tyler was an excellent player. I studied that kid. Then I got to play next to him, and it was awesome. We were blitzing, we were cutting and swiping, and we're little guys, but we tackle well, we can cover, and it was just a perfect position for me. And then he left, and guess what? I went back to being just a straight up corner. So it was like, man, so he left, and then, he had to go, make himself better. He became a head coach at SMU, and it was a perfect opportunity for him. But for me, it was like losing like your sensei or something like that. You know what I mean? And it's a person that had you, in the right spot. So I had to go back outside, and it was fine. We were the number 1 defense in the nation, so it was cool. But it just felt like I lost something right there. But then Brett Bielema came in, and Bobby Elliott, rest in peace as well. Good guy. They were co-defensive coordinators. They weren't just Bill. Everybody thinks of Bielema, but at that time he was a co-defensive coordinator. Bill didn't give them that much responsibility by themselves. So, Bobby Elliott was a guy, when he got here, he called me and Terrence into the office, and he sat us both down and told us what our responsibilities were. He was straight up with us. He didn't sugarcoat anything, but he was a great, nice guy. And then Bielema was more of a player's coach. He handled things from, what are you seeing out there? What do you guys want to do? And he listened to the players. So that's what's made him successful. So 2 good guys, with 3 good guys.
Not a surprise to you then that he took off and has had the career that he's had, Bielema?
Nah, he always had the swag. Bielema's going to walk around like he runs the place. He owns the place. You know what I'm saying? So he always had it in him. He's an Iowa guy. So, he's connected. And, hey, kudos to Bielema. Keep going, man.
Yeah. All right. Well, James, I could sit here and talk to you forever, man.
Oh,
It's been really entertaining.
Yeah.
Really entertaining.
All right,
Much appreciate the time.
I appreciate it as well, man. Good talking to you guys.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
All right.
James Dunnigan, former Wildcat, on with us here. We are live from Manhattan, KCSN live from Manhattan with the Lock It Up with Kurtz podcast. We'll take a short break, come back, and keep it rolling here as we get ready for K-State and TCU. to win it.
KU wins. The Missouri Tigers and the Kansas Jayhawks.
I'm gonna head down because it's 1:30.
Tries to win it. KU wins. The Missouri Tigers and the Kansas Jayhawks.
All right, we are back. KCSN live from Manhattan. It's the Lock It Up with Kurtz podcast. Aaron Lockett had to take off, and if you are going to the game, you'll find out why. You're going to be seeing more of Aaron Lockett at the game. I can just let you in on that little secret right now. It's going to be a big day for him, but really appreciate him stopping by, making time. We've got the band right here. We've got Gene Taylor walking over here. It's a good time right now. This is a little more lively, I tell you what, than I'm used to.
A little loud in here.
Yeah, I know. We've got Bethany Bowman is hanging out with us, and Gene Taylor, the athletic director here at K-State, sitting down. We've even got Tucker back there bobbing his head to the Wabash here, man. He's a Mizzou guy. We got a Mizzou guy getting into it, so very much appreciate that. But, Gene, good to see you. Thanks for coming by.
Yeah.
So,
how you doing?
I'm doing all right. I survived week one away from Manhattan, and I'm already back. So I guess that tells you something.
It tells you how much you missed us, or missed me, maybe. I don't know.
That's exactly it. I had to come back. For Gene Taylor. Well, hey, the atmosphere obviously here is really cool. I've been very impressed by what the atmospheres have been like for the last couple of games. Just from your perspective, what's it been like having the atmosphere?
Yes, it's been tremendous. Obviously, we just weren't sure how the fans were going to come back after COVID and all that, but they've come out. We haven't sold out completely. It's more about the energy in the stadium. We've been right around 48, 49, but just the energy in the stadium and around the stadium. We've, knock on wood, had some really good weather, and they've been coming out to support. And that's a good thing.
Yeah, no doubt. How badly did you feel like that win was needed last week?
I'm not sure particularly how it started, right? It would have been pretty uncomfortable for a lot of reasons if we, lost that. But I think once they figured out, I'm hopeful that it'll carry forward to this weekend in terms of their confidence. But we have to start playing ahead as opposed to chasing points. And, obviously coach has been talking to them about it and, defensively, not making sure they know what they're doing in terms of fit and all that stuff. But it was a huge comeback, a huge win, confidence builder, all of that stuff.
One thing that always strikes me about Coach Kleiman is high or low, he always seems pretty even keel, right? And I can remember that even from the first season in 2019. It was the big win at Mississippi State. I remember that post-game press conference being kind of like, come on, man, get fired up. That was a big win. But that's just sort of how he is. Have you seen him kind of remain in that sort of mindset even as this year's gone along?
Yeah, obviously with the team and, post-game in the locker room, he gets, he'll get a little more animated, and obviously conversations we'll have privately, but that's just him. He doesn't get too high, doesn't get too low. All through all those championship runs when he was at North Dakota State, I think that helped the team stay relaxed, in big games. But it also keeps them from panicking if they don't have success, and reminds them, hey, we can get through this. And so it's just his demeanor, and it seems to work really well.
Yeah, well, I want to ask you about this. I don't mean to put you on the spot too much, but you're a guy that I've seen before get real animated on the sidelines or, at a basketball game. I remember a Big 12 tournament game at one point in time too. What is Gene Taylor like in those scenarios?
That's why I go to the field to watch the game, because, I am, maybe some people see it, but it's a few less people hear my language sometimes when I get a little frustrated. But yeah, I care about winning, and I care about our athletes, and it's frustrating when they're not having success, but and I'm passionate, and I don't, not gonna say I'm sorry for that, because but I have to sometimes catch myself because there's players around, and if I'm looking like I'm upset about something, then I got to be careful with it. But these kids work really, really hard. When I talk kids, all of our athletes, no matter what. So I enjoy them winning, but I also hurt for them if they're not having success.
Well, I can really appreciate it, because I think a lot of people think of the athletic director, right, as being the guy that's like up schmoozing with donors or whatever during the game. And I'm sure you have to do some of that, but like, I don't know. I kind of like thinking of my AD being a guy that's going to be down there with the blood, sweat, and tears like everybody else.
It's literally the worst place to watch the game from is the field. I mean, obviously I can have a better vantage point watching it from up top, but I like to watch the game, and sometimes when you're in those suites, people want to visit with you, which is fine. I do enjoy that. So I do that before the game, and then I'll go up at halftime and see various donors. But then I watch the game from the field most all 4 quarters.
Yeah. Gene Taylor is talking with us here, K-State Athletic Director. What was your reaction to, and I know Chris Kleiman got asked this week, Matt Wells is a good friend of his in the coaching industry. I mean, guy 5-3 get fired. I mean, mid-season as an athletic director. What was your take on that?
Well, I've known Matt since he was a graduate assistant at the Naval Academy. I mean, I used to call him and make him help bring all of his graduate assistants to pull tarp when we had rain at the Naval Academy. So I've known him for a long time. He's one of the classy guys in the business. I consider him a good friend. He was actually on our list when we hired Chris, but they took him at Texas Tech. So it hurts. I hurt for him because he's such a good guy, and he needs a good guy in the business. I don't know all the ins and outs of what's happening at Texas Tech and where the pressure is coming from. It did surprise me because they're literally one win away from qualifying for a bowl if they'd have beaten us. I think Kirby probably they got beat pretty soundly by Texas and TCU. How they lost to us, I guess Kirby just felt, there was a change needed, and it's unfortunate because, yes, he's going to walk away with $7.5 million, but I think he'd rather be coaching, and
right.
He'll land on his feet, but it surprised me a little bit, yeah.
Firing coaches mid-season in general, is that like a hard fast? Like I'm opposed to that in all scenarios, or like is it a case by case basis?
You're just sitting here today, and it has nothing to do with Chris Kleiman or anybody else, but I just don't know what that gets you, other than more disruption. Now, if you have some major issues with that head coach and there's been a pattern of something going on, then sometimes you have to make that call. But, in Matt's case, this is just to get my 2 cents. He took over a program that really had some culture issues. And it takes a time to really rebuild that with particularly 100 and some guys on the football team. And then they have the COVID issue. They have a COVID year. So I don't know. I mean, I just don't know that you gain anything because your candidate list is probably still going to be the same in October as it is in December. And nobody's going to get a guy that maybe you can talk to some people, but you can still do all of that late November if you want to. And so that I don't know what you gain from doing that.
Yeah. Well, I know Kirby Hokut's a guy who's been on the college football playoff selection committee before. Has he given you some advice or rundown on how to get ready for your stint here?
No, he actually last week when we were there, we played golf together, and he just said enjoy it. It's a tremendous opportunity. It's a tremendous honor to be on it. A lot of eyes on it right now this time of year, and he just said do your homework. You have a lot of data that they provide to you. I mean, there is a ton of data. I just got an email this week about all the stats of every team in the country. So everybody takes it really, really, that's an important decision. Everybody on that committee, and you go in prepared, you have great conversations, and it's not an emotional decision. It is literally based on who we all feel is probably the best teams in the country. And we'll see the first vote on Tuesday, and people are asking me who you voting for. I can't tell you. I do have to kill you, I guess. I don't know.
I wasn't even going to ask. But I did think it was interesting, and I think this was from the last time maybe we had talked on the air, but you said they kind of like break it down like you have a conference or a couple of conferences or regions to watch?
Yeah, I'm watching the Pac-12 and the Mountain West,
okay.
and we each have somebody that watches with us, and then we had our first call with the Pac-12 and Mountain West this week, so my partner, so to speak, he leads the call with the Pac-12, I lead the call with the Mountain West. We ask them, who do they think should be in the Final Four, who do they think they should be in top 25, and the whys. They send us a bunch of data about their teams. Obviously, the Pac-12 is pushing a couple of teams, and the Mountain West didn't push anybody for the Final Four, but they pushed, 4 or 5 teams for the top 25. And that's the thing that people have to understand is we don't just vote for the top 4. We go all the way through 25, and that's really important for those teams looking for bowl opportunities because the higher they're ranked, then maybe the better bowl they get. And sometimes that's where it gets really difficult. Sometimes the top 6 is pretty easy, kind of. But then all of a sudden you're starting to look in, 12 through 15, and they're all 7-4 and 8-3, and it's important to make sure we get all the way through all 25.
Do you have to just say, hey, like I value X over Y. These are my personal preferences. I value X, Y, and Z as opposed to whatever else.
Well, kind of, but they also we have a certain standard. Like, head-to-head competition is huge. Strength of schedule, it's not really up there. There's 4 or 5 data points that they think we really have to look at, and we have to follow those standards. Within that, we can give our own view. Like, for instance, if I'm talking about a Mountain West team and, somebody else is talking about another conference team, and I said, look, I've seen this team play. They're really good at defense. I think they're a much better top 25 team than the one you're talking about, and here's why. Then we just kind of go back and forth, and Gary, as the chair, will let the conversation flow, and then he'll say, okay, we have to take a vote because we have to move through it fairly quickly. But the first week, I'm sure there's going to be a lot more that apparently as you go through the weeks, those conversations get a little quicker because you're more familiar with each team.
Right.
So I'm really looking forward to it. I'm flying out tomorrow to Dallas. Everybody says come in Sunday, get your top 30 done, watch your film, watch your teams, and then you start meeting Monday morning and all the way through Tuesday afternoon.
Well, if I can just put in a plug for Cincinnati, we can help out Cincinnati. What do you think about the Bearcats far this year?
Somebody told me now you're going to have a new group of Twitter friends that are going to hate you every week that comes out. And I'm like, oh, great. That's beautiful.
That is so true. As if you don't have enough already, which I understand. Everybody does, right?
But, it's really fun to watch these games because you start to get to understand players a lot better. And, I didn't know who the quarterback from Utah was until I watched him play, or the linebacker from San Diego State. And now you watch him, how many weeks it's been. You really get to know names a little bit, and it's been a lot of fun. Yeah. And then then I can watch other games like SEC and Big Ten or whatever. And I try to watch at least some game of the top, maybe 10 teams. And I watched Georgia's defense. I don't remember who they played against. Was Arkansas. I'm like, oh my goodness, they got an unbelievable defense. So that's kind of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, hey, before we let you go, I know basketball's coming up next Thursday, right, for the first exhibition games.
Yeah.
I mean, that is pretty crazy, but I think it sounds like a lot of optimism about the new transfers that we have on this men's basketball team with that young core. What's your outlook right now on the season?
Yeah, I've seen them practice a couple of times, and, Nigel hasn't been a whole lot of big part because he's having some – I think he's back. But I think there's a lot of excitement about the makeup of the team, the quality. I think the culture has been really good in terms of they all really like each other and get along. They had a scrimmage against Oregon last weekend up in Denver, and I think they played pretty well. Bruce was pretty happy about it. And then, there's a lot of optimism, but we're going to find out pretty quickly because their schedule is, gets right up. We got Illinois, we got, I don't remember, Arkansas
potentially,
potentially Illinois. I mean, they've got some pretty good teams right out of the gate. We're going to find out.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, Gene, appreciate you stopping by and making some time. I can promise you one thing. So I'm sitting in the stands today for the first time since 2010.
That'll be interesting.
And I can promise you, I will be in the stadium for the third quarter. I will not be out in the parking lot in the third quarter.
Be one of those leaders. Get through, get out there. And we have places in the stadium. You can grab a beverage if you like one. You don't have to go all the way out to your car. So
yes, I will be there for the third quarter. I have to. Otherwise, I'll have all the Twitter people after.
That's right. That's right.
All right, Gene, take care. Thanks you so
guys.
much
Thanks
for
having
coming
me on. I appreciate it.
All right, K-State Athletic Director Gene Taylor with us here on KCSN Live and the Lock It Up with Kurtz podcast. We'll get to Bethany Bowman here in just a moment as we are live with Lock It Up with Kurtz.
Tries to win it.
All right, and we are back. John Kurtz now with Bethany Bowman. It is the Lock It Up with Kurtz live podcast, KCSN live in Manhattan. We are headed down the home stretch here after a great night last night. Bethany was with me over at Rockin' K's just across the street. It was a really great time. I appreciate the KC Campbackers, everybody who helped out with that event last night. We just heard from Gene Taylor, K-State Athletic Director, which was great. And honestly, you know, we'll talk, Bethany, here about everything going on with K-State. Bethany does a great job of sports in Kansas, so we're going to dive into the Kansas kids on K-State's roster, of which there are plenty. But, man, like, I can talk to Gene Taylor about the college football playoff selection process all day. I think that is so cool that K-State has their AD on that committee, and it's just kind of fascinating to learn behind the scenes what's going on there.
Yeah, I learned a lot right there. Thank you for asking all those insightful questions. And Gene's got a pretty tough job there being on that committee, not only overseeing everything K-State, but like you said, he's watching games. He's trying to figure out who's in the top 25 every week. So pretty crazy. That's
a lot of stress and a lot of pressure. I'm with him. Like, man, you're going to have a lot of fan bases mad at you potentially on the committee there. They're going to search you out on Twitter. But, all right, so I mentioned Bethany is the director of operations, host and reporter with Sports in Kansas. There are a lot of Kansas kids on this K-State roster. We've been talking about this, you know, over the entire week, kind of gearing up for this. But it's like you start going down the list. We're like, okay, who can we talk about here? It's like, all right, well, there's player X, there's player Y. Oh, man, this guy, like all up and down the board. K-State just utilizes the state and the high school talent here and has for years, which I think is a part of why they've dominated that rivalry with Kansas, because you get so much emotional investment from all those guys.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I want to say, you know, people probably get tired of hearing me talk about the Kansas guys because there's a lot of guys that make impact. Obviously, the big player, Tyler, who's not from Kansas. So we appreciate everything they do for K-State. But, yeah, I mean, just with my role as sports in Kansas and seeing these guys in high school a little bit, or at least, you know, I've kept up with them. Going on to play at K-State, a lot of them, you talk to them, and this is a dream they've had since they were little kids. They just want to come to K-State. They want to play football. And so when they get that opportunity, sometimes, you know, it's not a full scholarship. Maybe it's a walk-on. You know, maybe it's a thing where they earn their way. But they want that chance, and they want to play right here in Manhattan at Bill Snyder Family Stadium. Some guys that have been big this year. Well, I'll start with the special teams unit.
As you say, we got to talk about our guy, Ty Zentner, man. Legatron.
Talked about him last night a lot, but, you know, he had that big punt last week. Ty Zentner, a Shawnee Heights grad, went on to play at Butler, but his holder, his kicker, Tayton Winkle from Halstead, he's done a great job. I think he's been really consistent this year. His holder, Jack Bloomer from Marysville, Kansas, he was a walk-on, and he was going to go play quarterback at Concordia University until he had a big game in the Kansas Shrine Bowl, had a few big punts. Okay. And K-State came calling, and he said, yeah, I'll take that. I want to play at K-State. So I just think, you know, stories like that are really cool. You look at the O-line, Noah Johnson, he was a walk-on originally from Bishop Carroll High School, played at Butler, came here to K-State. Now he's a 2-year starter. He is, you know, awesome. You look at that O-line, and then you add Cooper Beebe from Casey Piper. He comes up a lot, his name, and Josh Rivas, Hutch High School. And then you got Ben Adler, Wichita Trinity Academy. So those four guys on the O-line, you don't have to go to Texas or to Florida or wherever it may be. You think like all these big recruits come from. These guys, I mean, that's a good O-line right there for K-State.
It is. I think that's like perfect, right? You think about like the Wisconsins and Iowas of the world where they can kind of do the same thing, like recruit in-state. Kansas is never going to have like 50 to 100 Division I guys coming out in 1 year, right? That's just the nature of the beast. And it's not always going to be the skill position guys, but I think that is where you can sort of mine for some talent here, and how K-State has used them, because what have we talked about? Not just the offensive line, but also special teams. And so it's like these guys that can just be special teams dynamos. Like I think of Stanton Weber, who's a guy that I've done some radio with in the past. He's now coaching at South Carolina, but he was undersized, not somebody recruited to play receiver, but he came here and he was a team captain because of the work that he did on special teams. So, yeah, I think to your point, that's where you really can get a lot of run and juice. Not to say that there aren't great skill position players in the state of Kansas. Yeah. Look at what Devin Neal is doing at KU, for instance, right now. But, you know, you can find ways. K-State's always found ways to, like, milk as much out of these guys as they can in the talent from in-state.
You mentioned Stanton, his younger brother, Landry Weber. There's a skill position guy right there, and he's not going to be your top target. He's a Bishop Miege grad. Yep. But I feel like Landry has come up really big a lot this year, like on third down. Like, he's a guy you can look at, and you can get 15 yards from him. So I just think that's really cool. You know, sometimes these guys aren't Malik Knowles or Phillip Brooks, but they're just guys you can depend on. And I think that all goes back to that work ethic that they talk about. This is their home state. They're going to work as hard as they can to make the most of this opportunity, and they don't want to let it down. Other guys on the defense, Jerron McPherson, Baser Linwood grad, Echo Boydo from Lawrence High School. You look at the defensive line, Cimarron, Kansas, little Cimarron, Kansas. And you got Jalen Pickle, who comes here. I mean, he does not look like he's a small town Kansas boy.
No, he does not. That's a big dude.
Not at all. But yeah, he played a 2A Cimarron. So it's just crazy to me to look at some of these guys that come here to K-State and where they're from. And I have a special passion for that, being a Kansas kid myself, being from Kansas. And so I just love to see K-State recruiting in state. And I think they'll continue to do that as long as it's working.
Yeah, I love another name too, from my perspective. So I have not done as much with the high schools lately, but earlier on in my career, I was doing Manhattan High games and was much more heavily involved, certainly with the Centennial League, knowing what was going on there. And man, I can remember a game, it would have had to have been like 2016. Ryan Hennington playing quarterback for Junction City. I mean, he ran, and now Manhattan High has good defenses year in, year out. Like Joe Schartz does an excellent job with that program. And Ryan Hennington ran for like 250 to 300 yards, ran for like 250 or 300 on Manhattan. And it was one of the great individual performances I ever saw in my time doing MHS games. And now to see his journey, which has been wild, like from coming in as a walk-on quarterback, then to defensive back, and now he's beefed up and is playing like some linebacker for K-State. I mean, another pretty quintessential K-State type of story.
Yeah, that's a very athletic kid right there. And you saw that play, I think was it Southern Illinois or Nevada?
Yes, Southern Illinois, yeah.
Jalen comes up with the interception, but that play by Ryan Hennington, he had to pancake it so it didn't hit the floor. Kind of volleyball spiked it up, got the ball in the air for Jalen to make that interception. I mean, I think Ryan's a kid that's going to do anything that you need him to do. Like you said, he's a really good athlete. He played quarterback. He's not going to come here and play quarterback. We want Skylar slinging it, but I mean, he's just going to kind of be put in wherever the coaching staff thinks he can fit in best and what they need him to do, and he's going to do it. So that's awesome to see.
Well, and even, we were discussing you before too, like this is a fairly interesting game from your perspective, I think, to cover, being that TCU has Noah Boltikoff, right, on the offensive line.
Rose Hill.
Right, Rose Hill kid, where there have been a couple of kids that have gone there. And, I mean, obviously, Gary Patterson, it makes sense that he would recruit the state of Kansas, being a Kansas guy himself and a K-State grad, almost a head coach here at one point in time. So there are a lot of ties really on both sides in this game today.
Yeah, I mentioned he's not really playing a whole lot right now. I think that an injury kind of stymied that for him. But Chase Curtis from Pittsburgh High School, he went and played JUCO baseball in Neosho County out of high school from Pittsburgh High, and decided, hey, I miss football a little bit. I'm going to go to TCU. And from what I understand, I mean, I thought going into the year somebody they were kind of looking at to be a player, but like I said, I think he's still hurt, if I'm not mistaken. But that's pretty cool. You talked about from Rose Hill, and they've had a pipeline a little bit. Fultz brothers, a couple of them played at TCU. There was a quarterback from McPherson, Tyler Matthews, went down and played quarterback at TCU. So Gary Patterson, obviously a Kansas native. He's from, is it Larned? I think it's Larned.
That sounds right.
He played at Dodge City, and then obviously here at K-State. But he's from a small town here in Kansas, so I love that he continues to monitor the state and see some kids that he can bring down there. Really, whether it's K-State, whether it's KU with Devin Neal, Mason Fairchild from Andale in there, tight end, I just want to see kids go be successful. We're talking K-State here today, and we want to get some of those big in-state recruits here, but wherever they go, we talked earlier, Lucas Kroll, he's a kid from Mill Valley. He's I think still leading the nation, tight ends in FBS football, in touch receptions, was that a couple weeks ago. It's really cool to see from the state of Kansas kids go on to be successful, to me. Yeah,
well, I really appreciate the passion that you have for the in-state kids. I think it's rivaled only by Taylor Bratt, K-State's director of recruiting.
Don't let him hear me say I want kids to go anywhere else but K-State.
Well, yes, I know. But in terms of you guys are like the top two leaders in terms of being passionate about people in the state of Kansas, high school football certainly in the state of Kansas. So appreciate that, and appreciate you taking time to hang out with us this weekend, Bethany.
Yeah, absolutely. Really excited for this TCU game.
All right, so I asked you the other day just to promote yourself. If people want to follow you, where can they find your info?
Sports in Kansas. We'd love to have you guys following there. We'll have a ton of info going out about kids in the state, and we'll kind of they've got interest, whether it's K-State or anywhere else. And then my personal BJ Bowman 13. Director of Ops and host and reporter for Sports in Kansas.
All right, awesome. Enjoy the game, Bethany.
You too.
You got to hold down the press box for me.
What's your score prediction?
Ooh.
I don't think anybody's asked you that today.
Well, I'm trying to remember what I said on other pregame show that I did. Let's say I had K-State like 30-21, I think. 30-21 or 31-20. I think the Cats will cover. TCU seems like a mess right now with everything that's going on. And I can close out with some of that as well with BJ Kissel as he's going to hop on here. But, yeah, I'm saying K-State by like 9-10.
Okay.
That'll be my prediction.
All right.
Yeah.
Love to see it.
All right.
Thanks.
Take care,
Sean.
Bethany. All right, there's Bethany Bowman from Sports in Kansas. We'll take one final break and come back and wrap things up. The Lock It Up with Kurtz podcast live edition here at Bill Snyder Family Stadium. Trying to lose. All right, we are back live from Bill Snyder Family Stadium. John Kurtz with you here on the Lock It Up with Kurtz podcast, KCSN, live from Manhattan. Joined now by the man who's pulling the strings on all of this, BJ Kissel. He's put in a lot of hard work for this weekend and certainly appreciate that. Welcome to the Lock It Up with Kurtz podcast.
Thank you. It's nice to do a lot of work, and then once the cameras go on, like, it's weird to not have as much to do, like, and not hosting, not doing all this stuff, but you guys have been doing great. This stuff is a whole lot of fun. Got a special shout out to 360 Vodka and Holiday Distillery for everything that they've done to make all of this possible. They are taking care of the K Club here outside Veneer here in Manhattan. About 500 former athletes here at K-State that are in here enjoying some 360 vodka and some food thanks to Scotty Sieben and Rockin' K. So, yeah, this is a beautiful day. It's perfect.
It has. It's worked out very, very well. I'm going to pass along this, just a little bit of information that I'm seeing from inside the stadium on the injury front for K-State and TCU. Good news for K-State, Bronson Massey and Justin Gardner, both warming up. Those were a couple of question marks. Bronson Massey in particular will really help out on the defensive line. But Joe Irvin is not out there, who has been K-State's backup running back and a pretty dynamic one at that. So that will hurt. And then on the TCU side, it does look like Max Duggan is in there warming up. His status had been in question. Sounded like he had not practiced much at quarterback this week for TCU. But then Zach Evans, a game-time decision, supposedly, who is TCU's number one running back, the former number one running back in the country, five-star recruit, and uber talent, may or may not play this week. There's been a lot of drama with him. He took all the TCU stuff off his Instagram, and you know how you don't know anything about Instagram controversies these days, do you, BJ?
Do you want to go down that? We can talk about the Chiefs right now because it seems to be the talk of Twitter right now, but I don't know if we have enough time. It's a little nuanced. It's a little nuanced that you don't see that in the college level, but end of the day, social media can be a great thing or it could be a negative thing depending upon how you want to use it. And yeah.
Well, I'm curious. So you played baseball here at K-State.
I did.
What are the memories for you coming back here to Manhattan? What do you remember most from Manhattan back in the day?
Man, it's weird because seems like it was so long ago, and they've done so many upgrades, and they've done such a great job with the facility, especially the upgrade that the baseball facility has gotten over the last year, like even the 6 months. Like, it is unbelievable what they have here, and it's part. And I was telling Gene Taylor this earlier. It's like part annoyance because it's just like, man, they get all the cool stuff, and part's just pride to see like where the program is going and the investment that they're putting into it. So that's special to see, but my memories, like we were talking about this last night with a few of the guys, that I remember more stuff like off the field, like the bus trips, the stuff that like at the time was really annoying. And like, couldn't we just charter like every other team does? We got to bus to Kansas City. But those I remember. It's not as much the on the field stuff, hanging out with the guys and stuff like that. But I also spent a lot of time in college going and watching my wife, my girlfriend at the time, play volleyball. They were really good. So I've got a lot of special memories. My in-laws live here, so we're in Manhattan all the time. It's one of my favorite places to be, and bring our kids up here. It's a special place to our entire family. Yeah,
no doubt. Well, we have a couple of minutes here. I know big things are happening with KCSN all over the place with the help of Holiday Distillery and 360 Vodka. What's on the horizon now for KCSN?
Yeah, I'm hoping we do a lot more tailgate shows like this, get out in front of people and bring the partners that we have and the cool products that they have to make sure that people are tailgating and having a good time, making sure they're getting their drinks. But we're going to be doing more tailgate shows like this, not just for K-State. We're going to be in Columbia in a few weeks before the Georgia game.
Wow,
you never know. Maybe shock the world.
Yeah.
You never know. For MIZ fans, but and Tucker Franklin, our podcast producer, is a big Mizzou fan. But we've got that, and then on December 11th, you've got that KU Mizzou Border War basketball game. Lauren will be there for that. Details still being figured out, but we're going to try to activate around big college games and come and do content with guys who played and people like yourself that are immersed in everything and talk about it. So. A lot of cool stuff on the horizon. Obviously, we've got our Chiefs stuff. We're very Chiefs heavy with everything we have going on, but we've got partners like 360 and Holiday and a lot of our other great partners. Like, we're going to be doing some really, really cool stuff, and it's just the start. This is the first event like this that we've done, and we're going to be doing a lot more of these. And yeah, so follow along. Make sure you're subscribed and all the different channels, wherever you get content, whether it's YouTube or Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to shows. We're there. And we appreciate the support as we try, do something a little different.
Yeah, well, I can stress the K-State fans that are out there, if you are a Chiefs fan, like, this is the place to be for what you guys are doing halftime and post.
We do a halftime, a halftime update on Twitter, but we do a live post-game show from Bar and Grill out in Overland Park. Right now it's the Bullpen Bar and Grill up until the Kingdom Bar and Grill opens there at 127th in Antioch. We will be there after every Chiefs game as soon as it opens. Goal is December 1st. That is when they're hoping to open up that new bar. It's getting finished right now. But, a lot of Chiefs content and just Kansas City sports in general. I think as media changes, and you're right in the middle of it, you've been living this, that, digital broadcast, TV, social media, this space is all changing. And, this is kind of like our idea on how to create content for fans who want to stay up to date and informed and entertained about their favorite teams. Yeah. And that's what we're trying to do.
Well, the Chiefs postgame has been very helpful for me. It's been very cathartic when I get frustrated with the Chiefs after to listen to you guys. So K-State fans out there, make sure you check that out too.
Yeah, maybe we need to do a therapy, like a therapy Thursday is what we used to call it, a therapy session with everybody and social media and all that. And real quick, since I dodged it earlier, it's a very nuanced conversation with Anthony Hitchens, Tyrann Mathieu. I know it's K-State, but a lot of Chiefs fans who are listening to this, and I have a very unique, perspective on this because I know fans don't want, the small faction of fans that are very loud, vocal, that are tagging players on social media and calling them out, saying, "I hope we trade you. We never should have paid you. You're overpaid." All these negative things. I think sometimes for fans, it's really hard for them to know or to understand how players. It's not always as easy as you would think to separate that. That's not everyone. And that I've seen a lot of stuff on social saying 95% of it's positive and only 5% is negative. After losses, it's really not that much positive. It's the other way around. So let's not throw stats like that out there that aren't true. But at the same time, you can't do what the players did. You can't say that and not have the kind of blowback that you did when you group everyone together. So I think both sides need to kind of look in the mirror and say, you shouldn't be doing that. And at the same time, fans, I think, in general, we've dehumanized athletes with social media in a lot of ways where you can kind of say whatever and there's no repercussions. And same thing with media. You can say stuff that's factually incorrect or spun to try to create something. There's really no repercussions for any of that. And this is what happens when frustrations boil over. You hope that it doesn't, but when it does, you hope that the team stays united, because if they stay united and they start winning games and the messaging gets back on track, eventually it will blow over. But some of the stuff people aren't going to forget. You need more than 280 characters to get people's thoughts out. And I think if you'd sit down and have conversations these guys, you'd feel a little bit differently about where they're coming from. It's one thing from my perspective being around the guys. Most of the time you sit down, you have a full conversation, you'll understand where people are coming from. You might not agree, you might not like it, but you can at least understand it. And I think that's kind of where we're at, and trying to communicate and get thoughts across on Twitter and Instagram. It's just not the place.
Yeah. Well, get it rolling with a win today. Win on Monday night. Everybody will feel a little bit better in Chiefs Kingdom and beyond here in Manhattan. But it's going to wrap it up for us. Once again, shout out to Tucker Franklin doing all the work behind the scenes, along with BJ and everybody who's helped out. Holiday Distillery, 360 Vodka. It's been a really fun weekend here in Manhattan. All that's left is for K-State to go get a win. So we're going to keep up this and see about the Cats and the Horned Frogs. Thanks for watching, everybody. Take care and keep following us at KCSN.